This week on the Agents to Owners podcast, I have the pleasure to have J.C. Wogomon with me out of Greenwood, Indiana. I'm super excited to sit down with J.C. I've gotten to know him a little bit over the last couple of years from a connection of IAOA, and he always has an interesting conversation, or we always have an interesting conversation when we discuss. So he's kind of I view him as a wealth of information. Welcome to the program, JC.
Brad, thanks for having me, man. It's kind of
Yeah.
weird to hear somebody say I'm a wealth of information because I still feel like I'm learning this industry, relearning this industry.
We all are. I think we all are. But the nice thing, so a little bit of background. JC, before he started his own agency, the name of his agency is Catalyst Insurance Group, which he started in 2019. He had roughly 10 years of experience, mostly with Federated Insurance, and about a year with Brown and Brown. He was out of the insurance space for maybe 6 years or so.
8 years.
8 years. And then decided to start his own independent insurance agency. So I think that's a good place to start. Maybe just bring us up to speed on your previous insurance experience and up to what led you to start Catalyst Insurance Group.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. And whenever I get a chance to share my story about how we started this agency or why we started this agency, I got to go back to when I was 10 years old. And so when I was 10 years old, my dad passed away. Didn't have any life insurance, left my mom and I in a pretty rough position. And by the time I was 15, my mom and I were living on people's couches in our community. We effectively were homeless. And so I made a decision at that time, though, that I wasn't going to let that be my story. I wasn't going to be a victim of my circumstances. And so I decided to work my butt off, was able to get a full ride scholarship to go to Ball State University. And so I ran as hard and as fast as I could away from that previous lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And so when I was 19, 20 years old, a gentleman from Federated Insurance came and grabbed me and said, "Hey, have you ever met an old, poor insurance guy?" And given the circumstances from which I grew up in, that really resonated with me because I said, no, I haven't. And I was hooked at that point. And so the rest of my college career, I was like, all right, how do I get this job with Federated Insurance? And so, so I got started with them. They moved me to Minnesota for their 9-month training program. They're in Owatonna town. And so after that, they said, pack up your stuff. You're moving to Lafayette, Indiana. And so they moved me to Lafayette, Indiana. And that's where I got started with my insurance career there as a captive commercial agent. And so did really well, came out of the gate, guns a-blazing. And so, for me, by the time I was 23 on, I was making 6 figures a year. And coming from where I had started in life, I thought that I was pretty big stuff. And so the problem was, I like to say I peaked too early, I guess you could say. But to be honest with you, in 2008, when the economy flipped, being a captive, right, you have to follow the direction that they go. And so they went right when the rest of the industry was going left. And I don't hold any ill will towards them at all. They did what they thought they had to do as a company. Unfortunately, I lost over $1 million of business in 12 months, which equated to over 6 figures a year in income. And so it's kind of a blessing, right? And through every adversity comes a blessing. And at that time, I've often heard, get on your knees or God will put you there. And so I had a mirror held up in front of my face, and I did not like who I had become. I'd become somebody who had been obsessed with money, with status, with accolades, those kinds of things, and at the expense of a lot of more important things in my life. And so that painful refinement process, I stuck it out for a little bit, left Federated, went to Brown and Brown for less than a year. And just it wasn't a good fit for me personally. And so I got out of the industry altogether. I didn't like who it had turned me into. I didn't like the person that I had become in that process. And so, I mean, when I say I was out, I was out. I let my licenses lapse, everything. I was as far away from insurance as I could get. So, over the course of the next 8 years, I marketed a travel company for about 5 years, had a lot of fun, didn't make a lot of money. Then my wife and I moved from Lafayette to be closer to family down here on the south side of Indianapolis. And so through that process, went to work for Sunbelt Rentals for a couple of years, did construction rental equipment, and just wasn't a good fit culturally for me. So a friend of mine was opening an office furniture company and said, "Hey, we need a sales guy." I said, "Well, great. I know people, but I don't know anything about furniture." And unfortunately, I was sold a package that never really came to fruition. I was promised a lot of things that just never came to be. And so through that process, the guy had 3 strikes. The owner told me, first thing he said was, "If you don't know the answer, make it up and hope it's true."
Jesus.
And I was like, whoa, I've never done that before. And I'm not going to start doing that now. Jesus. And then the second thing he said was, "Hey, you need to call these customers, these pending deals, and tell them there's a price increase coming so we can get these deals across the line." I said, "But there's not." He goes, "They don't know that." So that's really not how I operate, man. And then the third deal was,
are you sure this wasn't Farmers Insurance? Because this sounds a lot like my experience with Farmers. Okay, I'm sorry. Go on.
So,
That was
the third straw, the one that broke the camel's back, the one that struck out is I'm heavily involved in coaching my kids' stuff. And it doesn't matter what they're in, I'm in it with them. Mm-hmm. And so I've been coaching, I don't remember. Let's see, this would have been maybe basketball at the time. He was in one sport or another, but in order to get down here to practice, I would have to leave work about 4:30. And the owner came to me and said, "Hey, I think you're spending way too much time coaching your kids' stuff. You need to spend more time at the office." And that's when I said,
"That's it.
I'm out." And so that's when I started formulating the idea. I came to that at that point. It was a long drive home that day after that conversation. I said, "I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's not this." And so spent some time, some soul searching, and I've always wanted to own my own business. I've always wanted to be able to do things the way I want to do them. I always had a hard time when I worked for somebody, if I saw a way it could be improved, to not have the ability to improve it. And so I talked to my wife quite a bit, and I said, I got to find something to do. I don't know what I want to do. And she's like, "Why don't you get back into insurance? You were a great insurance agent." I said, no way. I don't know what to do with it.
So it was her idea.
Not happening. That was kind of, I never really considered that, but I guess it kind of was her idea. And I was like, no, not doing that. And it's funny, if you ever want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right? So we were at church one day and I heard a sermon talking about big dreams and big goals, and how if you can achieve your dreams and goals on your own, then those aren't really dreams or goals. You don't really need God to help you do that. So it was like a lightning rod through my soul. And it was at that point in time, before church was over, I already had 90% of the business plan written in my head that I was going to go open an insurance agency again from scratch. And I didn't even know what that meant. I had no idea what the road ahead of me was going to look like.
Yeah.
When I decided to open it from scratch. So took me about 6 months, formulated a business plan, was able to get some direct contracts. And that is where the idea of Catalyst Insurance Group was born. So, a catalyst is a condition, event, or person that is cause of an important change. And that's really what we strive to do, is to use insurance, something everybody has to have that nobody likes to pay for, and at least give them a glimmer of hope that their money's going to at least something worthwhile than an insurance company somewhere that they have no connection with.
Yeah. So you got direct contracts. Who were you able to get direct contracts with?
So, it's funny. I had no idea the impact of that federated training and career experience would have. But I reached out to my own personal agent at the time, Kurt Watt, with Reliable Insurance in West Lafayette, Indiana. And I said, "Hey, how do I get a what do I need to do to sell Erie Insurance?" He said, "Well, I'll make some phone calls." So he made some phone calls, and after a business plan and a lot of meetings and a lot of in-depth investigation, Erie gave me a direct contract with them. Wow. And so that's where I got started. I'm very adamant. I love Erie, but I am an independent agent that represents Erie Insurance, not the other way around.
Yes.
So
did you look into networks at all?
I did. I looked at an SIAA affiliate, and it just wasn't the direction I wanted to go.
Yeah.
So I didn't go the aggregator route.
Yeah. So when I went, I was a farmer's agent for 9 years. And when I decided I wanted to go independent, and that was my thought, I'm going to start my own. And I tried to get direct contracts, and I didn't know what I was, I had no idea what I was doing. I think I could get Progressive, and AAA was willing to consider, and that was about it at the time. I didn't know about networks at the time, and I would have jumped on a network, but I would have regretted it, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Well, for me, when I made the decision to open an agency from scratch, at that point, it was an idea. I had no idea what it was entailed. See, a lot of people like you that come right out of a captive situation and go open, or, you worked for somebody else and decide you want to go from an agency to an owner, right? From an agent to an owner, you have perspective. You're working in a situation where you've seen how they do it, and you say, you know what, I can do it better by doing this.
yeah.
And for me, I was out of the game for 8 years, right? It would be
Yeah.
like being a basketball player when they invented the 3-point line, and all of a sudden now I come back to the game and there's a 3-point line involved. Like, I'm from Indiana. We talk basketball.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I had no perspective, and I guess in hindsight that was actually a blessing.
Yes.
So I just became a sponge. I just started finding every podcast I could find, and just listening and connecting with people. And I'd hear a podcast guest, and I'd find them on social media and look them up and say, hey, I met you on this podcast, or I heard you on this podcast. Mind if I ask you some questions? And that was such a huge help for me.
So for any of our, which is huge. Now, had you already started Catalyst when you started to your development that way, or was that before you went and started? Wow,
this was 6 months before I even started. As soon as I had the idea, at that point, it was just an idea. I had no idea how to make it come to fruition. And so I just tried to find as much information as I could. I just started Googling starting insurance agency and how to get a contract, and, all of the different things that were involved. Like I said, I started connecting with podcast guests that I heard. And, I'll never forget the first insurance podcast that I came across was Joey Giangola and Sid Rowe on
Agency Revolution.
I don't even remember the name of it, but that was the first one.
Yeah.
And so, then I heard guests on there and connected, and they told me to go check out other podcasts. And I, the podcast was really instrumental and fundamental in my business plan development and how I was going to run my agency.
Wow. Amazing. I mean, and what a good tip for any of those that are new or thinking about it. And I feel like I've talked about this with a couple other guests. I feel like there's so many more resources now than there were maybe, even 5 years ago.
I would agree with you 100%. One of the things I remember when I was a captive agent was you would talk to other people and they would give you like their C-level stuff. They would never be an open book because they viewed you as competition. And having taken that 8-year break and coming back into it now with groups like IAOA, and different carriers have their own groups for their agents, and the amount of information that's available that people are willing to let you, listen to for free, that they're willing to share. Right. I mean, it's just, it's amazing.
It is out there, and there's so many resources. So invest in your personal development, and you don't really even have to invest any money, just time and effort. Right. We touched on it a little bit before we got on that one of the things I like to ask is, because it's so difficult to start your own scratch agency, is how you were able to make it financially.
That's a great question, because, I started my agency with $5,000 out of pocket. That was it. And Erie has a great scratch agent program that if you qualify for it, they will help you get started. And if you produce, they forgive the money that they loan you to get started. It's a great program, but that helped as well. But for me, I went into this business with the attitude that I'm an intern in my own business.
Yeah, I love that.
Because I honestly had no idea. I knew insurance, but that
Yeah.
was it.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew what a dwelling limit was. I knew what a deductible was. I knew what liability was. You know, I knew what comprehensive and collision, but I had no idea about anything else. Like
Yeah.
the whole process was almost foreign to me. I'd never sold a home or auto policy till I opened my doors,
Oh, yeah.
because I was straight commercial guy, right? And so I went into it with the attitude that I'm an intern rather than, I know a lot of people when they open an agency, and I've seen so many guys do it, it's sell, 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 sell.
Yeah.
And then you see them kind of hit a plateau because they didn't bother to set up the infrastructure to handle it.
Correct.
And so now they got to tear it all apart and rebuild it. And that's a painful process when you've got a $2 or $3 million book of business because you went and sold like crazy.
Yep.
And I'd seen that happen in multiple different industries. And I decided to take a different approach that I'm going to go out and sell. You know, I'm going to go out, but I'm not focused on putting in $100,000 a month. Right.
Yeah.
That just wasn't my focus because, again, I had no perspective. So I focused on process. One of the lessons I learned from podcasts was you got to have processes and procedures. And so I didn't even have some that were bad to build off of. I had none. And
Yeah.
so it's really fun. I don't think I've even ever shared this,
but nobody does.
One of my first customers that came into my office, we went down to our conference room that we have, and I ran the quote up on a big screen TV and they had in the conference room because I thought that was a cool way to do it.
Yeah.
I had no idea, you know. And what happened from that very first one was like, well, what's that endorsement? And what's that premium? And like, I was like, oh boy, this might have been a mistake. And so, so yeah, you know, there's a million lessons learned from screwing it up, but yeah, that was, so the financial aspect of it was I didn't focus on supporting my agency. Yeah, I didn't pay myself for 6 months.
Yeah.
Thank God, my wife is extremely supportive. I consider her as vital to this business as I am because she keeps, you know, she's in the medical field and she's been able to support our family mostly from what she does. And so that enabled me to focus on growing the business the right way, putting the right processes and procedures, defining what our customer experience was going to look like, mapping out our customer journey, fine tuning our process, all of those things to where now we're really positioned to grow. And we just brought on our first producer about 6 weeks ago. So.
Wow. That's awesome. But I would say you're definitely in the minority of people that develop the process from the very beginning. And I mean, I would venture to say it's maybe 2% of business. Don't you think?
Yeah, I would agree.
You are, you know, most of us are hyper-focused, including myself. I probably didn't even hear or listen to the word process until I was in it. It's embarrassing to say, but for 10 years into my career, not to my agency ownership career, but before I even considered that. And so by you having that in place makes it so much easier when you did bring in a producer to say, this is how we do it. You didn't have to make it
right.
up.
That's exactly right.
Brilliant. And that's what I've been sharing with a lot of our scratch agents is start doing it now. Even though you're a one-person operation, go ahead and make a Loom video. Write it down.
If anybody gets the chance to connect with Billy Wagner, I'm going to give him a shout out.
Yep.
That guy is Mr. Process. And in the world of business, nothing is by accident. Nothing is by chance. And every outcome can be played in reverse to design the process to achieve the desired outcome. And that's what I learned from Billy. And he is Mr. Process, right?
Correct.
It's down to who takes out the trash in his office on what day.
Yeah. Everybody has a job.
And so that is one of the things that I just admire about that man to the nth degree is he taught me that nothing is by chance. And if you continue to do the right things over and over and over again, you're going to get the desired outcome that you want, right? Focus on the activities, not on the outcome.
Anybody that's new, that is, look at that. We both have it. Anybody new in the business, this is a must read.
Absolutely.
And Billy's not going to stop there. He's going to continue. And he says this, I've heard a few other, people say this, is that what's next? He's going to continue to, so he'll continue to amend this, but this book, Business Masterclass, I mean, that's a roadmap.
Absolutely.
We're doing.
He's got a vision of impacting a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to steal his thunder, but he is just an amazing individual who has had a huge impact, not just on my business, but in my life. And so if he ever listens to this, I just want to say thank you. But
yeah, well, I'm gonna point it out to him, especially that we both pulled out the book at the same time. That's amazing.
The designing processes, though, I mean, you're designing outcomes is what you're doing, designing desired outcomes. And so with that in mind, that's just had a huge impact in my business and in our success, is start with the end in mind. And I kind of always had that start with the end in mind.
Yeah.
Again,
I did not.
What's that?
I did not.
So even in the beginning, when my only carrier was Erie, I didn't need an agency management system, right?
Yeah.
I didn't. But I knew one day when I'm a $20 million agency, I'm not going to have just one carrier. And I'm going to need an agency management system. So you know what I did right out of the gate? The day I opened, I had an agency management system. Why? Because I wanted to start developing the habits and the processes and the procedures so that when I'm a $20 million agency, I don't have to reinvent myself every time, right? Begin with the end in mind, have a vision, work backwards. Man, if I can give anybody advice, that would be it.
Work backwards. Yeah. Well, you had amazing foresight too, because most of us are not going to see that way. And most of us don't think with the end in mind. I remember the first time I heard that and it kind of sounded crazy, because you're so focused, but of course now it makes all the sense in the world.
Well, nothing we do is by chance. It's all based off of the activities that we do on a daily basis. We get celebrated in public for what we do in private. Nothing is by chance.
Yeah.
It's all methodical. This isn't the Powerball here. So if you do the right things, you're going to get the right results. So start with the right results and work back one step.
Yeah. Wow. Great advice. So you mentioned, your management system. I believe that you are on Hawksoft, correct? Did you start with Hawksoft or did you start with? Okay.
I started with an agency management system that's not quite as easy as they lead it to be.
Gotcha.
I was not a big fan of how they controlled my data. To be honest with you, that was really I felt like I was being data muled, and I would put information into the system and I couldn't get it back out. And that just really bugged me. I got tired of being nickel and dime for everything as well. And so that's when I started seeking out the advice of more experienced agents that have been in the industry a long time. And so that's why I ended up with Hawksoft.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit before we got on air that you use Agency Zoom as your CRM. Can you tell us a little bit how you use your Agency Zoom to benefit your agency?
Well, let me put it this way. I have a new producer that started 6 weeks ago, and I haven't even logged him into the agency management system. He spends all of his time in Agency Zoom.
Yeah.
And in the carrier systems. And that's it. So my entire process is managed by Agency Zoom. My entire sales process, all of it. New business, commercial business, renewal business, service pipeline, texting, phone calls, everything is hubbed around my CRM.
What do you for texting? What system do you use for that integrates well with Agency Zoom?
I just went and set up so my phone system's with Lightspeed Voice, and that was a change I made when I went to Agency Zoom.
Okay,
I pulled that Band-Aid off at the same time, and then had some hiccups, but we got through it. They have amazing customer service.
Yes.
And best in the industry, in my
Agreed.
opinion, as far as VoIP systems go. But part of that is the texting with Lightspeed Voice couldn't be done directly through Lightspeed, so had to go set up a Twilio account, integrate it with Agency Zoom, and once I did that, it was easy peasy.
Yeah, we use Lightspeed as well, and their texting is not up to speed, I'd say. Or
Yeah,
I don't
mean,
know if I shouldn't say that.
their texting's great. It just can't be integrated into Agency
Okay.
Zoom.
And maybe to improve. I tried it 2 years ago when no, I think it was 3-4 years ago when we started with Lightspeed. Any other tech that you're using in your agency to help enhance I know you said I think it's kind of your thing.
I'm kind of tech poor, to be honest with you. But
let's hear it.
Here's the thing about technology is it is an investment, right? And investments don't pay off right away. They have a long-term return on investment. And so I viewed everything I did as this. As our business grows, that percentage of that spend is going to go down compared to our overall revenue, right? Most of these technology investments have a fixed cost per month. And as business goes up, those don't go with it. So as our business grows, the percentage that I spend on technology over time will go down, right?
Well put. Yep.
But I do spend a ton of money on technology. So Canopy Connect, I'm going to give them a shout out. That is my secret sauce.
Yeah.
I will, my entire sales process is built around, I'll say Canopy Connect, but in reality, it's getting people's deck pages. So, early on, again, I didn't have process, right? I didn't have experience. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I would ask for people's deck pages so I could compare coverages, right?
Yeah.
And that was always the friction point. That was one of the major bottlenecks is they wouldn't want to give it to me. I don't want you to see what I'm paying. And I would get a wealth of excuses. And when I heard about Canopy, I was extremely skeptical at first, but I'm like, all right, I'm going to give it a whirl. And what I did is when I learned how to position that in my sales process, I get deck pages every time.
Do you? Wow, really?
Every single time. And in 2 years of using Canopy Connect, I've had 2 customers not want to do it. And you know what? They probably weren't going to do business with me anyway.
How are you positioning that then? Because I think that
I position it as how it makes it better for them, how it makes it better for the customer. Yeah. I say, look, you don't understand, it's my job to understand insurance and it's my job to explain it to you. And I can't do that if I don't have something to compare it to, because otherwise you have no point of reference.
Yeah.
Right. What does my competition do? My competition runs it. Maybe they might run it through a rater. They might run it through a bunch of carriers, whatever, but they find the one they're going to go with. They print off the carrier's proposal and email it to them. The customer flips to the last page and says, that's more than I'm paying. I'm out.
Correct.
They have no value proposition whatsoever. And so by having that Canopy Connect, I can get their deck pages. I do agency branded proposals through PandaDoc. That is another technology that I use. I have a virtual employee that handles all of that. So I send her the deck pages and the information. She inputs the data, runs the quote, sends it back to me. I review it. I send it back to her. She generates the proposal, sends it back to me. I send a quote video off. But that having the deck pages, that's everything.
Yeah.
Because even if you're apples to apples coverage wise and $100 less, is that enough to break the relationship with the good hands people or the Jake guy that they've been with since they were 16? Probably not. They're not comfortable. They don't know me all that well. They're not comfortable with me. But when I can go in and I know that I can go from $500,000 of personal liability to $1 million of liability on their home, and it costs an extra $7 a year.
Yeah.
But the perceived value to the customer is exponentially more.
Exactly right.
They're like, yeah, he's only saving me $100, but I'm doubling my coverage.
Yep.
So
it means a lot.
We compete on coverage, not on price.
Yeah.
Right. That's going to give us a higher retention. That's going to get us a better customer. And that's going to get us a better long-term performance as an agency than just trying to monkey hump people's legs to quote their insurance.
I like that term. You mentioned your virtual employee. What kind of tasks do you have her doing for you?
She will do certificates of insurance for my commercial clients.
Mm-hmm.
She will do a lot of reminder stuff. Like if we haven't received e-signatures back, she'll go in the system and send them a text message. She'll run reports for me on a weekly basis. But her main job is inputting all the information in for quotes and then generating proposals and then wrapping up new business as far as getting all the documents where they need to go, sending stuff out for e-signatures, making sure we got everything back in the system, that everything's organized and ready to move forward in our process, in our customer experience.
Yeah, we just in fact last week I've had our VA for 9 months, and now that I just made updated a list of all the things that I have her doing for us, and it's kind of come a long ways, and to look at how valuable that's actually been. We have her doing most of our requoting of our existing business and sending it over, and she's gotten pretty efficient with that. And to send that over to our licensed staff has been a massive help when 80% of the legwork is done. Amendments on policies, mortgagee changes, we have her doing initial phone intake. She handles about a fourth of the calls that come into the agency. So I ask everybody that I come in contact with what they're doing and how valuable it's been. I was so skeptical on a virtual assistant initially. At first I thought, I want nothing to do with it. I can't, I have the staff for it. I don't need it. It just sounds like a bad idea to me. Man, I've been proved wrong, because it's been a huge help to us.
Oh, so. Absolutely. It's well, when you start an agency from scratch, I'm the chief everything officer, right?
Yeah.
And everything from adding Johnny's new, 1989 Mustang with liability only to mortgagee changes to people buy. I mean, everything. I had to do everything, right? And so getting that quoting and proposal generation, I don't apologize for my process because it works so well. I mean, we usually close 80 to 90% of what we touch, and the other 10 to 20% we really don't want.
Yeah.
But
sorry, that reminds me, I know you're a Purdue football fan, and I can't remember the name of the safety. This is probably 6 years back. There was an amazing safety there at Purdue, and I remember seeing a sign in the audience that said, I think he was number 9, and basically it said, if number 9 didn't tackle you, it's because he didn't want to. That's what it reminded me of. If we don't write 10% of it, it's because we didn't want it. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I could go into that. I can go into ideal customers and a whole different journey on that. But I kind of lost my train of thought on what we were talking about.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm going to kind of pivot just a little bit along those lines. How are you generating leads?
100% networking and referral based, to be honest with you. I play the long game, right? Yep. At IAOA, we heard a speaker say this is the get rich slow business.
Yep.
And to be honest, it really is. You gotta go out and build relationships with people. Brandon Smith just spoke at the Big I here in Indianapolis on Monday, and I've heard him talk many, many times. And one of the things he always says is the only difference between a contact and a contract is the letter R, and that stands for relationship. Yeah. Right? I'm a relationship guy, and so building relationships with centers of influence and just showing up consistently. I am amazed the opportunities that fall in my lap by just showing up consistently. Yeah. Whether that's Rotary Club, Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
There was a talk about this too. We go from the insurance industry being Aunt Betty brought in her weekly premiums in cash, came to the office every week, to swing the pendulum completely the other way to where we're, the Geicos and the Progressives and the direct-to-consumers and the Lemonades were going to put us all out of business, right? The independent agent was going to die off, and that didn't work so well. And what's going to happen is that's going to come rest in the middle. Mm-hmm. It's the agents of the future, in my opinion, are going to be the agents that have the ability to still build relationships, to still provide value and service to customers, but leverage technology to enhance the customer experience. That is where we win as independent agents. Those are the ones that are going to survive and thrive into the future. And so that's kind of been our focus. So taking that old school ability to go out and build relationships and then wowing them with a Canopy Connect, where I send them an email, they click a link, and in 30 seconds, I have 90%. And then automated from there, as soon as that Canopy poll comes in, my CRM automates an underwriting questionnaire that gets sent off to them. They complete that. It automatically moves them into the pipeline and sends all of that information to my virtual employee to quote. And then she sends it back to me to review. And next thing you know, we're doing a quote video for the customer, 10 to 12 minutes, talking about how our agency uses insurance as a vehicle to impact our community. Here's your insurance proposal. Here's what you have. Here's what I'm offering. Here's the price. And we run through it 10 to 12 minutes and I'm out. And that, people are like, that was the easiest thing I've ever had to do.
And you touched them. You know what I mean? With so many ways, you made it easy and you provided that video, and people do love it.
Oh my gosh. If any agent listen to this, if you're not doing quote videos, and I know of every 100 agents that listen to this, probably 3 are going to actually implement it.
Yeah.
So, but if you're not doing quote videos, you are missing the boat. People always ask me, even agents that I would consider to be pretty tech savvy, how do you have time to do quote videos every time? And I said, my God, how do you have time not to?
Yeah.
Just a plug for quote videos, guys, if you're not doing them. So think about this. You do a quote, you send it to a prospect. One of the people in the household, usually the husband or the wife, one or the other, is the one that gets the quote. They look at it. You pick up the phone, you call them, you explain everything that's in that quote, right? Or try to if they answer. And then what do they inevitably always say? I got to run this by my wife. I got to run this by my husband.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're out of the equation now. Now you're relying on somebody that got a 15-minute education in insurance to relay the value proposition that you just explained to her or him to their spouse, right? And what are the odds that what's the spouse going to do? Flips to the last page. What's the price?
Yeah.
Right. And then they call back with an hour's worth of questions if you do get to the next stage. And so in my quote videos, the wording that I use is so precise and on point for various reasons that I don't get a lot of questions. I usually get 2 or 3. And then through my system, they can hit the accept quote, enter their payment information online, and I'm out. Like I've had people bind coverage or request to bind coverage at 3 a.m. when they got off work, because that's when they could sit down and watch the video.
Yeah, I try to keep mine to, I mean, I don't have a time limit, but 5 minutes or less, and touch on the key points and maybe a couple key key pieces of it. Like I like to touch here on, most of our carriers now have some, maybe it's not the same way in Indiana or across the country, but have some form of this undamaged, roofing and siding endorsement. I think that's an important endorsement to touch on, and just a few things, but it puts a face with the name and a voice, and it's just a touch that doesn't come from a phone call or an email.
I would agree.
And
I would agree.
It's so impactful. So it's and it takes 5 minutes, really. And it doesn't have to be high production value. That's not what people are looking for. Half the time they're looking, between the proposal that you're illustrating or the face. It doesn't have to be a YouTube sensational video of any sort. But hey, I want to be respectful of your time. I did want to touch on one piece. I recently saw that you've been involved in a charity of the Warrior 110.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So the main crux of our entire business model is using insurance as a vehicle to impact our community. And we do that by giving a portion of every dollar we bring in revenue back to the community to either elevate the human condition, meaning help feed, clothe, or educate, or support our military veterans and first responders.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time, please, of the amount that you give back?
We give a percentage of our revenue.
Okay.
And so to date, and I did this with my very first month in business, and people are like, how could you afford to do that? I said I couldn't, but that's what I committed to doing.
Yeah.
I'm doing what I said I was going to do. And so we give a percentage of our revenue. And to date, we've given back over $40,000 or close to $40,000
I love it, man.
to our communities. So people think I'm crazy. That's fine. That's my purpose, right?
Yeah.
That keeps me centered. That keeps me focused. And so, the blessings that have come from that have nothing to do with my profit and loss statement are exponential. I can't even begin to describe that. But I was looking for a veterans organization to support. I didn't want to necessarily use one of the big ones that get where your donations get gobbled up in admin fees and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And so I found a local organization here called the Warrior 110. And this week their event is actually going on. So what they do, this started about 4 years ago. 2 gentlemen that own businesses, and one in extreme southern Indiana, just outside of Louisville, Kentucky, and then one in Franklin, Indiana, which is about 15 minutes from us. Trying to find a business idea to do together. They're both veterans. They both suffered from PTSD. They both served, and so they said, "Well, I can't really think of an idea for us to do business wise, but why don't we just walk from your business to mine, and we'll raise money for veterans?" They said, "Okay." And so the 2 of them got together and rocked 110 miles from just outside of Louisville to just outside of Indianapolis. And so then the idea of the Warrior 110 was born. I joined them the second year for the last leg of that journey, the last 13-mile hike. Did that 2 years ago, did it last year. And now we're doing it this year to help raise awareness for post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injuries, and ultimately try to stop combat veteran suicides. And so just yesterday, I was a support vehicle for them for the first 32 miles of that. And then I'll be joining them on Saturday for the last 10-mile hike. And my vehicle will be running point. My wife will be driving the vehicle with my daughter, and my 12-year-old son's going to hike it with me. And it's going to be awesome.
That's amazing. I mentioned before we got on air, it's so meaningful to me. Anybody could write a check, for something, but to get involved, to give your time, to give your heart into something, to me, that's special. So,
well, I'm just a big fan of sacrifice. Our veterans signed up to go serve an idea that we all benefit from, right? And they don't know me, they don't know you, but yet they're willing to lay down their life for both of us on foreign lands to do just that. And I didn't serve, but that doesn't mean I can't stop fighting for those who did.
Yeah, I'm passionate about that myself. And so that kind of caught my eye when I saw that. And I just think it's amazing. So kudos to you. Yeah. And if you would like to donate, I don't know when this runs through. I noticed that he is almost to his goal. There is on JC's Facebook page, there is a JC's fundraiser for the Warrior 110, where you can donate right on his Facebook page. I'm going to leave this in the show notes, and also leave it on LinkedIn. Hopefully it's not too late by the time this airs. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Our agency is going to match dollar for dollar every donation that we get up to $2,500. So we're hoping to have a $5,000 impact for our veterans in their fight against post-traumatic stress.
Man, I'm inspired by you and inspired by what you're doing. So that's really, I'm really touched by what you're doing. Again, I want to be respectful of your time. Man, it's been great to know you. I consider you a friend now that we've had a little more time together. And thank you so much for being here. And man, I wish you all the best.
It's my pleasure, man. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm available any way you'd like.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, how can they reach out? How can they find you?
You can give me a call. You can look up our agency online. You feel free to give me a call anytime you'd like, or email. Reach out to me I'm on every social media platform known to man. I'm accessible. because I can see further than others, it's because I stand on shoulders of giants, right? We've heard that quote before. And there was a lot of people who have much larger, much more successful agencies than mine that have taken that time to pour into me and invest into me. And how selfish would I be not to pay that forward? So,
yeah, man. Yeah. Impressive. All right, sir. Well, again, thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of the Agents to Owners podcast. Until next time, we'll see you soon. See you, JC.
see ya.